Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Rebecca stepped off the transport at Naval Base Ventura Point with a calm that didn't beg for attention. Salt wind pushed across the tarmac, the Pacific humming behind hangars and flight lines, rotors beating somewhere to the south. She adjusted the strap of her duffel and kept moving, eyes scanning, not staring. She knew the rhythm here, the clipped orders, the steel on concrete, the way people measured you before they spoke your name. It wasn't her first time on a SEAL base, and the ground felt familiar, hard, honest, unforgiving. Vance met her at the edge of the operations building. "Commander," he said, voice low like he was respecting the air. A quick handshake, a steady look. No ceremony, just the kind of greeting that says I see what you are, not what you claim. He walked her through corridors humming with screens and status boards, past teams packing gear, past an armory door left open just long enough to show order in rows. She clocked little things, misplaced forms, a timing board out of sync by minutes, a supply cart with the wrong labels. Not disasters. Friction. Friction always costs. Porter looked up from a console when she stepped into ops. Young, focused, trying not to stare. Dana gave a small nod from the intel bay, fingers moving across a map layer, eyes bright behind glasses. Rebecca stood at the central screen and watched the base breathe. Schedules. Flight windows. Training blocks. Enough moving parts to bury mistakes if no one wanted to find them. The door opened and the temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. Rourke came in with the kind of stillness that makes noise around him feel like an offense. Tall, pressed, the face of someone who'd rather be obeyed than understood. His eyes went to her and stayed there. "Commander Hayes," he said, like a statement of jurisdiction. "We run tight here." She held his gaze. "Good. Tight is safe." He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He launched into a quick walkthrough of the week's evolutions. Night insert drills on the ridge. Maritime interdiction lanes off the outer pier. Logistics targets moving between units. He talked like a checklist, she listened like a fuse line. When he paused, she asked about a fuel allotment that didn't match air hours. A small thing. His jaw moved once. "We have it covered." She nodded. "Copy." She let it go, for now. Out on Pacific Ridge, the afternoon picked up speed. Teams climbed the cargo nets, sand grinding into boot leather, ropes slapping wood, breath pushing out in short hard lines. Rebecca walked the perimeter and kept her hands behind her back, not trying to be anyone's coach or savior. She watched footwork on the wall, triggered discipline in blank fire drills, comms cadence under stress. A few operators recognized her name from a past life and looked away before their curiosity showed. That was fine. Respect doesn't arrive with orders, it shows up with results. Vance drifted beside her as a hello thundered low over the course. "How's the read?" he asked. "Sharp," she said. "But the timing grid's off. They're losing seconds between lanes." He nodded. "No one else caught that." "Then that's why I'm here," she said, and meant it. By evening the sun laid a copper line along the water. Rebecca stood at the edge of the pier and felt the base settle into its night posture, lights warming in the hangars, a crane groaning somewhere, the taste of jet fuel thin on the air. She replayed the day in quiet order. The look on Rourke's face when she asked the fuel question. The way Dana buried something in a spreadsheet, then glanced up like she wanted to say more. The way Porter hovered near a comms rack, half ready to be asked, half afraid to be noticed. Back in quarters, she unrolled her gear with the same care she used before a real op boots lined under the rack. Binder on the desk. A legal pad for notes because paper doesn't crash. She wrote 3 lines: fuel versus flight, training grid lag, supply labels mislabeled, who benefits. She set the pen down and exhaled. She wasn't here to win arguments. She was here to keep people alive and make the work clean. If that put her in someone's way, they could learn to move. The phone buzzed once. A short message from Vance, morning brief at 0600. Rourke will be there. She stared at the words long enough to hear what wasn't written. He'll test you. She slid the phone face down and looked at the ocean through the narrow window. The base would wake before dawn, and she'd be ready before it woke. Out there, dark water kept its own counsel. In here, so would she. Rebecca was up before the alarm, boots on, binder packed, and in ops by 0545. The room carried that thin pre-dawn hum, screens awake but quiet, coffee biting the air. Dana glanced over and gave a small nod like she'd been waiting for an all-clear to speak. Porter stacked checklists, tried to look busy, failed, then stood straighter when she came near. Vance arrived with the same steady gait, slid a brief onto the table, and met her eyes long enough to send a message: keep it tight. At 0600 the door opened and Rourke stepped in, not hurrying, not late, just time to make everyone adjust to him. He didn't sit. He took the head of the table with a hand on the back of the chair and said they were moving night drills to a compressed window to prove readiness. Rebecca tracked the plan and saw the slip. Fuel versus flight time again, pallets misallocated, a staging order that forced an unnecessary swap in the hangar. She waited for an opening, then said, "Sir, that sequence risks a ground delay and a weight imbalance on load-in." She slid a printout forward. "We can fix it by reordering 3 items." Rourke didn't look at the paper. "Noted," he said, which meant dismissed. The room stayed still. Vance didn't blink. Porter swallowed hard. Rourke ended the brief and told everyone to move to the hangar for a spot check. The walk there felt longer than the distance. Inside, lights burned white across the floor, forklifts idled, a hello crew checked tie-downs. Rebecca took a knee by the manifest crate, counted straps, traced the numbers, and pointed to a pallet that should have staged first. "This goes forward," she told Porter, calm and simple. He nodded, grateful for the clarity. That was when Rourke crossed the floor. He stopped close enough for the room to pay attention. "Commander Hayes," he said, voice flat, carrying just enough for the nearest teams to hear. "You are not here to rewrite my operation. I'm here to keep it from slipping," she said, standing. "We're losing minutes and building risk. The fix is small. You will make changes through me," he said. "Not on my floor." His eyes held hers like it was a test of obedience. She didn't drop them. "Copy, sir. Then I recommend we implement the reorder now so the crew doesn't have to repack in 20 minutes. Silence spread out. Forklift idle, rotor tick, a cough from somewhere. Rourke's jaw shifted. He stepped closer. "You think you see what I do not," he said, softer now. "You do not." "I see math," she said. "And a timeline. It happened fast because fast is how anger hides its own shape." He reached, grabbed a fistful of her hair at the crown, and yanked. Pain flashed sharp, but training was older than shock. She pivoted on the ball of her foot, dropped her center, trapped his wrist with one hand, turned her shoulder as a lever, and sent his balance forward and down. Concrete met him hard. She released before the joint locked and stepped back, hands open, voice level. "Sir, disengage. Do not touch me again." The hangar froze. Porter's mouth opened and closed. Dana stood up halfway from her chair. Vance moved one step, then held. Rourke rolled, breath ragged, pride louder than pain. "You assaulted a superior officer," he said, pushing to a knee. Rebecca didn't raise her voice. "You initiated contact. I defended myself. multiple witnesses present. A crew chief killed the forklift. Now there was only air and the sound of a hello ticking cool. Rourke stood fully, face red, uniform scuffed at the sleeve. He stabbed a finger toward her, thought better of it, dropped his hand, and said, "You're finished." He turned to the room. Back to work. No one moved right away. Vance stepped in, placed himself at a slight angle that favored de-escalation. "Sir," he said, controlled and respectful, "we can resume once safety notes are logged." He looked at Rebecca. "Commander, document your observation and the staging correction." She nodded and pulled the manifest, pen steady, handwriting clear. The normal act of writing put Bones back in the room. By 08:30, Ops had the first statements. By 09:30, security forwarded internal camera indexes. By 1000, the front gate logged NCIS entry, Agent Victoria Rhodes with 2 investigators, neutral faces, clipped questions, a plastic evidence bag for anything that mattered. She asked for initial interviews, requested the camera angles, and asked if any training drones had been airborne with a lens pointed at the hangar. Porter said a unit was up for a systems check. Dana's eyes flicked to Rebecca, then to Rhodes. "We might have a clip," Dana said. "I'll pull it." Rourke tried to keep the floor moving like nothing had happened. He reassigned drills, barked timings, used volume like a tool. It worked on noise, not on truth. Word moved faster than orders. By noon, statements were in progress. Rhodes set up in a side office, kept the questions tight. Where were you? What did you see? What did you hear? What did she do? What did he do? No adjectives. Facts. Dana returned with a short file from the drone test, hands a little too still. Rhodes watched it once, then again, then wrote a time stamp. She didn't announce a conclusion. She requested medical pictures of Rebecca's scalp and the scuff on Rourke's sleeve. Rebecca accepted the camera calmly, parted her hair, let the lens do its work. When Rhodes asked for Rebecca's statement, Rebecca kept it clean. He approached. He objected to a staging correction. He grabbed my hair. I executed a standard defense and disengaged. I did not strike. I did not continue once the threat ended. Rhodes wrote, said thank you, and moved on. The base didn't stop, but it didn't feel the same. People still lifted, timed, checked, but eyes carried a new weight. Vance came by her desk at 1500 with a single sheet. "Admin wants a formal log," he said. She signed, logged the time, and handed it back. At 1630, Rourke issued a memo about maintaining decorum and proper channels, which read like control, not safety. At 1700, Rhodes informed command that preliminary findings warranted referral to a formal hearing. No theatrics, just process. Rebecca packed her binder, slipped the medical photos into a folder, and stood. The day had bent, not broken. She walked out into a clean wind off the water and told herself the same thing she told teams before a hard night. Stay accurate. Stay honest. Stay ready. Rebecca carried that line into the morning while the base shifted under the weight of what came next. NCIS took over a corner of ops with clipboards and sealed envelopes. Rhodes kept the pace dry and controlled. She pulled copies of rosters, camera indexes, forklift logs, the manifest sequence for the hour in question. She asked for the training calendar and the email thread that moved the drills into the compressed window. Admin tried to slow-walk it. Rhodes reminded them it was a federal investigation and asked for read receipts. Dana routed the pulls without commentary, eyes steady, fingers fast. Rourke started his counterplay before lunch. A memo about insubordination. A reassignment note for Porter to another bay. A request to pause drone testing, pending safety review, which smelled like an attempt to bury the one lens that mattered. Rhodes answered with a preservation order, no deletions, no power down, no changes to storage hardware. Vance posted the order on the ops board like a safety notice. People read it as they passed and didn't say anything, which said enough. Porter's interview ran quiet until the key moments. He stared at his hands and then lifted his chin and told Rhodes exactly where he stood, what he heard, how fast the grab happened, how fast the defense happened, and that it stopped there. No adjectives. Facts. He signed his statement with a hand that only shook after the pen left the page. Outside, Rebecca nodded once. You good? He swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Drink water, she said, and moved on. By afternoon, a visitor badge hit the front desk, Captain Elias Monroe, JAG. He walked in with a plain folder and a look that didn't need volume to fill a room. He introduced himself to Rebecca like they were late for a train. I'm in, he said. We'll keep this straight. He asked Rhodes for a minute, confirmed jurisdiction, then came back with a short list, medical photos logged, witness list sorted by proximity, copy of the drone clip, copy of the memo trail. He drafted a council notice to command that Rebecca would not speak outside formal channels, then told her, you answer only what's asked. No extras. Rourke tried proximity pressure next. He showed up in the hangar while teams prepped gear and spoke about discipline and the chain of command. He didn't say her name, didn't need to. Eyes found the floor. Vance walked through like it was any other Tuesday, stopping by the load table to ask a routine question loud enough to break the spell. The room breathed again. Little things matter. Rhodes flagged a discrepancy in the fuel allotment emails, an edit tag that didn't match the time the calendar moved. Dana tracked the metadata to a workstation that Rourke's aide used. She printed the header details and logged them with chain of custody stickers. No accusations, just paper that pointed. Monroe built a timeline on a legal pad, drill compression, manifest staging, floor conflict, assault, defense, witness statements, medical photos, drone clip, memos after. He tapped the pad with the back of his pen. Process will hold if the records hold, he said. We keep them holding. It wasn't clean socially. Two chiefs who'd been in Rourke's pocket for years started asking operators whether Rebecca had escalated tone. Rhodes interviewed them, wrote their words down, then asked where they were standing when it happened. One was outside. The other admitted he was on a call while it broke. Monroe didn't smile. He didn't have to. He circled their statements in his notes and wrote distance. Night brought quieter pressure. An anonymous text reporter said his transfer would stick if he picked sides wrong. He showed Vance, who took the phone to Rhodes. She photographed the screen and pulled tower logs. Rebecca told Porter to keep the phone on, not respond, and log anything further. You're not alone, she said. He looked like he wanted to believe it and almost did. The next morning, Rhodes requested a command briefing with all department heads. She laid out the evidence collected so far, not like a show, just like a checklist. At the end she said the case met threshold for referral to a general court-martial review. No one clapped. No one argued. Rourke's jaw set. He asked for counsel. He got it. Monroe walked Rebecca to a side room and set expectations like a flight plan. They'll push for character. We stay on conduct. You did not initiate. You disengaged when the threat ended. We anchor to that and to the video. She nodded. Understood. He watched her for a beat. You keep your routine. Run. Eat. Sleep. Work clean. They'll try to pull you into noise. I don't chase noise, she said. Good, he answered. Don't start now. Word spread through Ventura Point in the way news always spreads on a base, fast, sideways, and then everywhere. Some operators gave Rebecca a short nod as they crossed the lot, the kind you could miss if you weren't looking. Others avoided eye contact like distance could keep them safe. Vance kept the duty roster normal. Dana sent her the final export of the drone clip with the hash values on a separate page. Porter handled his tasks in the new bay and kept his shoulders level. By the week's end, orders arrived setting the venue, courtroom of the Pacific Command, Honolulu. Travel packets printed. Monroe booked time with Rebecca every afternoon to rehearse clear answers. Rhodes finalized her referral memo and handed it up. Rourke stayed visible, corrected uniforms in hallways, checked doors with a command coin. None of it changed the date on the calendar. On her last night before Wheels Up, Rebecca stood by the pier and listened to the bass settle again. She thought about the first 3 lines on her legal pad and added a 4th, "Don't let anger write the script." She closed the pad, locked her drawer, and set her alarm. The process would do what it does. She would do what she does. In the morning, she'd step toward the thing everyone else stepped around, and she'd do it without raising her voice. Honolulu was bright and blunt, palm trees steady in the wind outside Pacific Command. Inside, the courtroom felt cooler, wood panels and a seal on the wall, a place built to strip drama down to facts. Rebecca sat beside Monroe, hands flat, shoulders square. He set a legal pad in front of her and said, "Answer what's asked." Nothing more. She nodded once. Across the aisle, Rourke sat with counsel, stare fixed, jaw tight like steel cable. The panel took seats. The judge called it to order. Government laid out the charge in plain terms: assault versus self-defense, conduct unbecoming, the chain of events on the hangar floor. No music, no speeches. Just the list. Monroe kept his pen capped. Rhodes took the stand first. She walked through her process. Camera indexes, forklift logs, drone clip preservation, medical photos. She didn't lean on adjectives. She pointed to exhibits. Time stamp. Chain of custody. Integrity check. The panel listened without needing to be convinced. Rourke's counsel tried to paint the hangar as chaos. He suggested commands were misunderstood, that Rebecca closed distance, that tone escalated. Rhodes didn't move. "I asked each witness where they stood," she said. "I matched that to camera angles. The video shows the colonel initiate contact by the hair. The defense lasted less than 2 seconds. There was no strike after separation." She stepped down. No extra words. Porter testified next. He stayed soft at first, then found a clean lane. He marked his position on a diagram, showed the line of sight to both faces, replayed what he heard, the warning about the staging order, the grip, the takedown, the stop. He didn't add judgment. He signed his statement already. He repeated it here. When counsel asked if Rebecca had a temper, Porter looked over once and said, "She was calm." That hung in the room longer than anything else he said. Dana came after. She confirmed the fuel versus flight mismatch and the calendar edit tag. She explained how the drone test picked up the angle by chance. She gave the hash values like reading off a barcode. Counsel tried to imply favoritism. She said she routed data the same way she always does. Vance followed with the simplest version of events. He saw Rourke close distance, he saw the grab, he saw the control move, he saw Rebecca disengage. He kept his answers short. He wore the years on his face without asking for credit. Then the video. The drone clip played once at speed. A quiet intake of air moved across the gallery. It played again slower. Hair grab. Pivot. Drop. Release. Step back. Hands open. No second act. The judge asked to view the medical photos. The scuff on Rourke's sleeve. The abrasion on Rebecca's scalp. No one argued with pixels and skin. Rourke took the stand. His counsel led him into a story about command pressure, about standard slipping, about a subordinate undercutting unity. He kept his voice level, but the panel watched the clip too. Monroe stood for cross and used only the paper. "Colonel, is that your hand in Exhibit D3? "Yes." "Is that Commander Hayes's hair?" Yes. Did she strike you? No. Did she continue to apply force after you hit the ground? No. Monroe sat. He didn't raise his voice. Rebecca testified last because Monroe wanted the room to be settled before she spoke. He asked her to state her role, the correction she proposed, the sequence she observed, what she felt, and what she did. She said she saw a risk, she offered a fix, she was grabbed, she executed a standard defense, she stopped when the threat ended. Counsel tried to bait her into a word about respect or ego. She said, this was about safety. That was it. Closing arguments were dry on purpose. Government said the facts stood on their own. Monroe said self-defense is not insubordination, and leadership is not a license to touch. He put his pen down and rested his hands so the panel would look at him and then at the evidence, not at performance. The judge recessed. The room exhaled for the first time all day. They didn't wait long. When the panel returned, the judge read the findings. Cleared on assault. Cleared on conduct. The referral of separate administrative action for Rourke went forward. The words landed like a deep breath. No cheering. No collapse. Just a shift you could feel in your teeth. Rourke didn't look at anyone. He sat very still and stared at a spot on the wall that had never done him harm. Outside, Monroe shook her hand once. You did exactly what you needed to do, he said. Rhodes gave a nod that meant the system had worked this time. Porter stood a few steps away and looked lighter, like he'd put something down. Vance checked his watch and said they had flights, and tomorrow had to run like a normal day or none of this meant anything. Rebecca looked at the ocean beyond the parking lot and let the wind clear out the last static. She hadn't chased noise. She hadn't let anger write the script. She had stayed with the facts and with her job. On the flight back to California, the cabin lights dimmed. She opened her legal pad and wrote one line under the others, the point is the standard. She closed the pad, leaned back, and let the engines carry her home to Ventura Point, where the base would watch how she walked in after this and decide what to learn from it. Rebecca kept her stride steady and her voice even. Ventura Point didn't cheer. It adjusted. Salutes came crisp, conversations shorter, but eyes met hers without flinching. Vance gave a small nod and slid a new training schedule across her desk like it had been waiting for the right weather. Dana forwarded updated checklists, cleaner than before, timestamps aligned. Porter returned to his original bay without announcement, put his name on the duty board, and got to work. No speeches. Just a shift toward straight lines. Command circulated a formal note, Rourke relieved pending administrative action. The memo didn't crow. It reminded everyone what standards look like on paper. In ops, noise levels returned to normal. The hangar sounded like a hangar again, metal, boots, clipped comms, the breath of aircraft. Rebecca moved through it like any other officer who planned to be judged by tomorrow, not yesterday. That afternoon, tasking orders hit her inbox, Operation Phantom Tide, covert intercept on a coastal cell tracking naval movements. Narrow window, sensitive target, zero appetite for error. She called a short brief in the bay. Vance, Porter, Dana, the team leads. We'll run it clean, she said. No drama. We get in, get the package, and leave no ripples. She laid out the route, the timing gates, the contingencies. Dana posted comms frequencies and a failover plan. Porter reviewed load sequencing, eyes steady this time. Vance asked one question about exfil timing and then said, we can hold that. Pre-combat checks ran like a metronome. Weapons, optics, batteries, water, redundancies. Rebecca stood at the board and watched the minutes tick toward go. The ocean was a flat line of slate by the time they pushed off in low silhouette craft. Engines barely lifted above the surf. The shoreline ahead held its lights close, a smear of sodium over concrete. She worked the net calm and clipped. Push 1. Check 2. Mark 3. The responses came back tight. Insertion drew a thin thread through rocks and current. A sensor ping spiked early. Rebecca froze the team in shadow and counted 20 beats while a patrol truck drifted past the overlook. When it cleared, she moved them again, low and quiet, into a drainage cut that fed the service yard. Porter ghosted to the panel and killed a camera loop with a handheld. Dana's SAT feed confirmed the blind spot. A gate bolt that should have squealed was already loosened. Vance's fingers had done their work hours earlier under cover of a routine check. Little things matter. Inside the facility perimeter, the air smelled like salt and dust and copier ink. Rebecca kept the pace measured, not hero fast. A guard rounded a corner early. She raised a hand, held her team, let him pass, then rolled them into the server room on her mark. Dana's packet hit the stack, drives cloned with a clean hash. Porter covered the hall with a breath like a held note. Vance watched her back with the patience of someone who'd carried more nights than he could count. When the duplication finished, she signaled the lift. No victory posture. Just a turn, a file, a move. An alarm stuttered 2 corridors away, the kind you get when someone's schedule changes by 5 minutes. She pressed her palm flat, calling for hold. Footsteps angled wrong for them, then broke off. She exhaled once, tapped 2 fingers, and they threaded back the way they came. Exfil met a tide running harder than forecast. She recalculated on the fly, shifted to a lee behind a rock outcrop, and timed the push with a set that could carry them without showing crest. The boats were where they should be because Porter put them there early. On the ride out, they kept quiet. The moon burned a path west. The shoreline folded behind them. Rebecca watched the wake and let the adrenaline drain in measured breaths. Back at Ventura Point, the debrief cut tight and factual. Dana's dump revealed comms maps, target names, dates, and a plan that would have put future operations at risk. The package was clean, the chain of custody tighter than a drum. No casualties. No lost gear. No drama. Word didn't spread. It settled. Operators nodded without the theater of gratitude. Vance leaned against the doorframe after the debrief and said, "They followed you because you were clear." Porter just said, "We hit times," like that was the only compliment that mattered. Dana sent a summary with 3 bullet corrections for the next run. Rebecca replied with "good catches," and logged them for the board. Over the next week, procedures shifted the way habits do when results make the argument. Load orders matched manifests. Fuel matched flight. Training grids closed their gaps. No memos about culture, just small corrections that stayed corrected. People watched less for collapse and more for cadence. They knew where to stand, what to carry, and when to speak. The base looked the same and felt different. One evening, Rebecca walked the ridge and let the wind push hair from her face where it had once been grabbed. She didn't think about the courtroom or the clip. She thought about the standard and the next schedule. Vance joined her for a minute and didn't say much. He didn't have to. Down below, teams ran the course smoother than last week. At the pier, a crane swung in a clean arc instead of a lazy one. In ops, a clock that had drifted now kept time. She wrote 2 lines on her pad that night: "The point is the standard, and the standard is daily." She closed the cover, switched off the lamp, and let the bass hum through the window. The fight had quieted, but the lesson stayed loud in the way routines get loud when they're kept. Tomorrow would ask for the same things: accuracy, patience, clarity, and she'd give them the same way she had today. Without raising her voice, Rebecca kept doing the small things right and let the big things take care of themselves. Weeks bled into a new normal at Ventura Point. The hangar sounded like order, not ego. Schedules hit clean marks. The board and ops stopped slipping. People didn't whisper as much. They worked. Porter took over a lane he used to avoid and ran it like he'd been born there. Dana built a template that killed 3 recurring errors. Vance walked the floor like a quiet metronome, fixing drift before it became a skid. No slogans. No banners. Just the standard, daily news about Phantom Tide's intel came back through official channels. Federal teams rolled up the coastal cell quietly. A few names Rebecca had circled in her notes landed on warrants. There were no victory speeches. A two-line message hit her inbox from a command desk she'd never see, package-enabled interdictions, good work. She filed it and went back to the training grid. That was the point. Work clean. Move on. Rourke's case moved the way bureaucracy always moves, slow, visible, and final when it lands. Administrative action made it clear he wouldn't return to command. Some people were angry. Some were relieved. Most just reset. The lesson wasn't written on a wall, it lived in a rule everyone could understand: rank doesn't license contact, and discipline isn't a punchline. Rhodes closed her file with the same dry professionalism she opened it with. Monroe sent a short note that read, "Proud to have stood next to the facts." Rebecca replied, "Thank you," and that was that. She used the calm to build a bench. Porter got put in charge of staging for complex evolutions, then taught the fix to other bays. Dana mentored a junior analyst who'd been scared to ask questions. Vance and Rebecca rewired the after-action review so it surfaced small misses without shaming anyone. The room learned that precision wasn't personal, it was protection. You could feel shoulders drop and timing improve. There were moments that tried to pull her back into noise. An online comment thread second-guessing the hearing. A rumor that she only got results because people were afraid to cross her now. She didn't answer either. She kept walking the line at dawn and kept the pad on her desk with 4 simple lines: fuel versus flight, grid lag, labels, don't let anger write the script. The list reminded her how this started and why it lasted. One afternoon, she found Porter at the pier watching a team practice ladders. He said he still thought about the hangar and the court. She said she thought about tomorrow's load plan. He laughed once and then straightened. "We keep it boring so guys stay alive," he said. "Exactly," she answered. Later, Dana brought coffee to ops and pointed at a small checksum mismatch in a backup. It wasn't a crisis. It was the kind of thing that becomes one if you ignore it. They fixed it in 10 minutes and logged the fix in 2. Command asked Rebecca to give a short talk to the newest class rotating through Ventura Point. She didn't tell war stories. She talked about timing gates, about owning your lane, about stopping when a threat ends, about never using volume to hide a weak plan. She said the chain of command is only as strong as the example it sets. She finished with one line: the point is the standard, and the standard is daily. The room didn't clap. They wrote it down. That night, the base was quiet again. A crane moved like a second hand. The ocean pushed a steady track of white at the breakwater. Vance stopped by her office and leaned on the doorframe. "You know they're going to keep testing it," he said. "Good," she replied. "It means it's real." He nodded and left. She looked out at the water and thought about the first day back, the fuel question, the grab, the defense, the video, the courtroom, the mission, the checklists. None of it felt like a movie. It felt like work done right in rooms that don't care about applause. Before lights out, she pulled the pad and added one more line under the others: let the facts speak and let your work echo. She set it down, turned off the lamp, and listened to the hum that meant another day had landed right where it should. The lesson wasn't complicated. Courage doesn't need a stage. Integrity doesn't ask for credit. Leadership isn't loud. It's consistent. It fixes what's small before it turns into what breaks you. It protects people you may never meet by holding a line you can't always see. In the morning, the watch changed, and the base woke the way it always should, on time. Rebecca laced her boots, stepped into the corridor, and headed for ops. The doors opened, lights came up, and screens blinked into their checks. She greeted the room with a nod and a quiet "morning," then set the day rolling. Outside, the Pacific kept its rhythm. Inside, so did she. And without raising her voice, she left a standard behind that was loud enough for anyone willing to listen.